Avoiding foreclosure in Alaska, breaking down the process. This is going to be a little technical, so let's put our nerd hats on. Let's go. So, what is foreclosure? Foreclosure is the process, or what happens when a homeowner defaults on making their mortgage payments. And then the lender takes action to recover the unpaid amounts, that whatever that balance is, by reclaiming the property. Now, in Alaska, most residential mortgages are secured by a deed of trust. Now, the deed of trust is different from a traditional mortgage in other states. What it means is that there is a power of sale clause that allows the lender to foreclose on the property without going through the court system. We call it non-judicial foreclosure. Now, there are cases where their deed of trust doesn't have this clause, this power of sale clause, and then they have to go through the courts. Now, non-judicial foreclosure is the preferred, or it's the go-to and technical method for foreclosing on a property in Alaska. The reason being is it's more cost effective and doesn't require a judge to get involved, and it works through these steps. First, there's the default. So the begins when the borrower misses their mortgage payments. Typically, the borrower enters into a default 30 days after a missed payment. However, federal law requires that lenders waive or wait until the loan gets to 120 days delinquent before starting the foreclosure. This allows for loss mitigation options like a loan modification. Then the notice of default goes out. So a trustee, which is typically attorney, is a neutral third party that is named in the deed of trust, then records the notice of default in the district, like say here in the third district in Alaska, in Anchorage, where the property is located. This happens 30 days after the default, but no less than 90 days before the sale. So typically it's about a 120-day process. Within 10 days of recording that, the trustee must mail or deliver the notice to the borrower outlining the amount owed, the property details, and the intent to sell. Now, the good news is that there is a cure period. So once they've delivered that notice to the borrower, there's about 90 days where they can cure and make up that entire amount. So maybe you win the lottery, maybe mom gives you the money, maybe you inherit some, but there's an opportunity to then keep your house. Now, then the notice of sale will go out no less than 30 days prior to the sale. So at least 30 days prior, the trustee must do a couple things. They need to post or publish the notice with three public places within 5 miles of the sale location. So if it's here in Anchorage, it's pretty much anywhere in Anchorage. If it's in Eagle River, well, it doesn't matter because it's going to be sold at the Boney Courthouse, so it's within 5 miles. They need to publish it in a local newspaper, typically something like this, Alaska Journal for Commerce, and it's got to be in that Commerce or ADN, Anchorage Daily News, for at least 4 weeks. Then they have to publish it online at least 45 days prior to the sale. That typically goes to something like Foreclosure or auction.com. And that notice is going to include the date, time, and location of the auction. Then the foreclosure sale occurs. Now it's a public auction, typically. So anybody, it's an all skate, anybody can go. Typically, the lender will put in a credit bid for the amount owed, and third parties can compete. And they can also bid with cash. And then the highest bidder wins, and the trustee then issues a deed transferring the ownership. Now, one dirty little secret is that if it sells for more than what's owed, those are called overage proceeds, and those kind of go into trust at the borough or municipality, and then they'll hold on to that, and you can recoup that later. Now, post sale, here's the thing: there's no statutory right of redemption. That means, can you get your house back after it sells? No, not in this case. But the good news is that there are no deficiency judgments allowed. That means if the house sold for 295,000 and you owed 300,000, it's a wash. That 5,000, they can't go after you for it. Timeline is about 120 days for this. Next is the judicial foreclosure. It's a less common route. The judicial foreclosure process comes into play when there's no power of sale clause, once again, in that deed of trust, and the lender wants a deficiency judgment. So what happens is the lawsuit gets filed, then the lender files it in the superior court in the district. Then the borrower is served a complaint and has 20 days to respond. If the borrower doesn't respond, guess what happens? The lender wins by default. If it's contested, then the court will review the evidence, and then the judge will decide the case. If the lender wins, the judge just authorizes the sale. Now, then there's a notice of sale. This is done by the court. So similar to non-judicial foreclosure, the property is sold at a public auction, but the sale is overseen by the court instead of the trustee. There's a redemption period though. So unlike non-judicial foreclosures, the borrowers have 12 months after the sale. So it's a longer process. It takes 12 months typically to get it to that point where they get to a sale. And then there's 12 months after where if once again you hit the lottery, you can redeem that. You'll have to pay some interest and an additional cost though. But if the price of the sale doesn't cover the debt, this is where the deficiency judgment comes in. The lender, say they got 295,000 and you owed 300,000, they can seek an additional judgment against you to get that money recouped. And it typically happens through a bank sweep, seizing assets, or wage garnishment. Now that timeline once again takes much longer, up to a year. Now, are we technically a judicial foreclosure state? No, we're primarily a non-judicial foreclosure state, but most foreclosures happen outside the court system through that power of sale clause in the deed of trust. This is really important to understand. Now, the key differences between judicial and non-judicial. Once again, judicial, court involvement; non-judicial, faster. Deficiency judgments only in judicial cases, but prohibited in non-judicial. And the redemption only for judicial. Okay. And you have 12 months after the sale to redeem that home. Now, if you are in this situation, there's a couple options for you. You can reinstate. That means catch up on your missed payments before the auction. Loss mitigation, explore options with your lender like a loan modification or some kind of forbearance or hardship. Legal help, you can always consult a real estate attorney or a HUD approved housing counselor for guidance on your defense, what those alternatives are. Or you can try to beat the clock. If you don't want the house or you want to sell it, you can work with a real estate professional and you can sell it before that deed of trust or that notice of trustee sale hits and expires, and then they sell the property. But you're on the clock. Time is of the essence. So my final thoughts are that this is very important. Alaska's foreclosure process leans heavily towards non-judicial, which means it happens fast. So offering for you is to make sure that you work with somebody and understand these issues because they're very important. So if you're facing foreclosure, time is of the essence. Understand your rights and options, and that can make all the difference. Thanks for tuning in to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. We think this information is very important. We would love for you to not forget to subscribe, share, comment, ask questions, reach out to us, but definitely share this information with somebody if they're in this situation. Until next time, stay informed. Thanks.